I love locker perks. I'm Workworm, and I've always felt like lockers are such a forgotten feature in Dead by Daylight. Killers don't check so often, and survivors are too scared to hide them because if they get caught, they're instantly in the killer's grasp, with no chase and no hits. But the reason why I love locker builds is because even if you mess things up in a panic, you at least have some relief that the killers are too reluctant to check extra lockers for the fear of wasting time. If you can get over your own personal fear of being caught, then locker perks can be some of the most powerful abilities when used strategically. Now, I have what I already think is a phenomenal chase escape build, but I decided to try out as many locker perks as I have, just to see which are the best for survivability and how well some perks will work with others. From what I've seen, there's about 10 survivor locker perks. You can see in the back here some gameplay of me using them, but I'll briefly go over what they do. Starting with Jane Romero's Head On, probably one of the most popular. This perk lets you stun the killer when you fast exit a locker, as long as they're within range, you're not exhausted, and you spent 3 seconds in the locker. And of course, after using this, you'll become exhausted for 40 seconds. Next, there's Meg Thomas's Quick and Quiet. This isn't solely a locker perk, but it's an important one since it removes all sound as well as the noise detection notifications made by a fast action, like vaulting or exiting or entering a locker. So the killer won't know you've done this rushed action unless they are directly watching. This also has a 15-second cooldown between uses. Now for one of my personal favorites, Elodie Rakoto's Deception. When you interact with the locker while sprinting, this will make the loud noise notification that the killer sees, and the locker doors will visually swing open. You just won't enter it at this point. And don't worry, since you're not actually entering the locker, Quick and Quiet won't cancel this out. You then have 5 seconds of no scratch marks until the perk goes on a 15-second cooldown. During all this time, you will be able to enter lockers while sprinting. Another one of my favorites is Ellen Ripley's Lucky Star. When you hide in a locker, you'll make no grunts of pain. Once you exit for the next 30 seconds, you'll still make no grunts of pain and you'll leave no pools of blood. During this time, you'll also be able to see the aura of all of the survivors as well as the closest generator. When this time is up, it goes on cooldown for 30 seconds. Now we have Zarina Kassir's Red Herring. This is an interesting one because after working on a generator for 1 second, the aura will be visible to you always, until you complete the generator, start a new one, or enter a locker. Though, upon entering a locker, a loud noise indicator will trigger for the killer at the generator's location. The trigger can be done once every 15 seconds, but you'll also need to work on a generator for 1 second again before it can be reused. Another is Aurella Rose's Rapid Response. This simply makes you exhausted for 20 seconds after fast exiting a locker. When you gain the exhausted status effect, you'll see the killer's aura for 2 seconds. Next up, there's Nancy Wheeler's Inner Strength, which becomes active after you cleanse or bless a totem, unless you have the broken status effect. After you enter a locker while injured and wait inside for 8 seconds, you will be healed to the healthy state and the perk will deactivate until you cleanse or bless another totem. Now we have my main survivor's unique perk, Felix Richter's Built to Last, which will recharge your depleted item to 99% after hiding in a locker for 10 seconds. Each use of this perk reduces the recharge by 33%, so potentially you can use a single item for about 3 times the normal charges. One of the final 2 semi-locker perks are Kate Denson's Dance With Me, which makes it so that you leave no scratch marks for 5 seconds after rush vaulting or fast exiting a locker, followed by a 15-second cooldown. This is similar to Deception with the addition of triggering by rush vaulting and of course without the locker noise indication. And the other semi-locker perk and final perk on this list is Leon Kennedy's Flashbang, which lets you create a flashbang while in a locker after you've completed 40% of a generator. This has one use, detonates with a loud bang and a flash of light, creating a noise indication and can be used to blind or stun the killer. Given all that information, the following is my general tier list on which of these perks are the best for locker builds. I'll go through this list from the bottom up, the first being not really locker focused. Flashbang is here of course because this involves working on a generator for 40% to get the item. You simply go into the locker to craft it and then using the item that has nothing to do with lockers. The next tier I call the necessary tier, and that's because Dance With Me, being the only perk in this tier, is just a slightly worse version of Deception. I know it can be used in different circumstances like vaulting, but we're comparing it to how it's used with lockers specifically, and I feel like Deception just has much more to offer, so that makes Dance With Me a bit repetitive in comparison. The next is what I call the tolerable tier. These perks are okay, but they're just overall nothing special. Rapid Response gives 2 seconds of seeing the killer's aura, which is great, but there are so many better aura reading perks, and if you're looking for a perk specifically for aura reading, then Rapid Response probably isn't the one you're going to go for. Red Herring is okay for distracting the killer, but I find that since you need to go into a locker to activate it,
And you probably don't want to be around where you're trying to lead the killer to.
I found myself running away from the generators I was working on much more often, and just overall slowing down the generator repair time for the team. Next, we have the convenient tier. These perks aren't crazy good, but they're definitely very useful given the right circumstances. Inner Strength is certainly a convenient way to heal, But if I'm not mistaken, only about 5 totems spawn in a map, so tracking those down sometimes takes a while. And even after all that searching, the combined time of cleansing the totem and waiting in the locker to be healed is longer than a survivor just healing you normally. And if you want to use it again after that, you have to go and spend time finding another totem. It can definitely be useful in certain circumstances, like if you carry head on and the killer knows you're using head on, then that fear of them being stunned might delay enough for you to get off that heal while in a chase. And then once you get back out in the chase, it's like you get an extra hit and you can loop the killer for a bit longer with that. But I just think the time put into it is what brings this a little bit down on the tier list. Build to last is also good for getting 3 times the charges out of an item, but the reason I bring it a little lower is because you're probably not using this unless you're intentionally bringing an item that you know you're going to use a lot of charges on. If you're just searching for items around the map or you don't really care about the items you're bringing, then Built to Last probably just isn't useful to you at all. So it's a very, very situational perk. When necessary, it's very good, but overall, it's just a convenient perk. Now we go on to what I consider to be some of the most valuable perks. Head on is considered a valuable perk because I know survivors love any opportunity they could possibly have to stun the killer. Not only just that, but the biggest fear about using lockers is being grabbed out of them. Now, if the killers approach the locker trying to grab you, you just use head on to stun them and get some distance. This is essentially just removing the worst part about hiding in lockers. The reason this isn't in the highest tier is because I believe some of the other perks are better at helping you escape a chase. Head on is good if you need to stun the killer, but that doesn't exactly remove you from the chase. And I think if you utilize the other perks a little bit better, then head on isn't even necessary. We also have Lucky Star in this tier. I just think all the features of this perk makes it such a valuable thing to use. It just makes exiting the locker and getting away so much easier. You can find survivors to help you heal if you're injured. If you're trying to sneak away to get there, then you also leave no pools of blood and make no grunts of pain, so it's going to be hard for the killer to track you whatsoever. You can quickly use it if you just need to find a generator. No matter the situation, Lucky Star is very valuable for putting you back in the game. The reason it's not any higher because outside of escaping chases and reestablishing yourself, it just kind of makes things that are a bit of a nuisance less so. Overall, it's valuable because when escaping chases or hiding in lockers, being sneaky is the best thing you can have. Next is what I call the essential tier. For me, these perks are the best of the best when it comes to locker builds. Admittedly, having deception here may be a little biased, but I think it's such an essential perk because not only does it get rid of scratch marks, which is great for disorienting killers, but you can also use it to adapt to varying situations. For example, I find that a lot of killers are just naturally reluctant to check lockers due to the fear of wasting time. So with every time you're able to successfully deceive the killer using this perk, it's just going to build more and more reluctance on them checking lockers, making hiding within lockers way better at escaping a chase. And of course, if they're not reluctant to check lockers and they do check the lockers every time you use deception, then that just also gives you way more time to get away from a chase as the perk is intended to be used. The only other situation I could think of is that they realize you're using this to get further away from where you actually use the deception and you still continue to hide in lockers. All you have to do is adapt with that decision they're making and hide with the locker that you did deception at. There's so many different ways this perk can be used in tricking the killer. Even if they think they're onto you, you can just change your methods using the same things and still get ahead of them. And finally, we have Quick and Quiet. This is also an essential because it works with every single other one of these perks. Most important thing about getting into a locker is you don't want the killer to know you're in that locker. If you fast enter without the perk, it makes a noise notification, but fast entering is the quickest way to get into the locker. So Quick and Quiet, muting that completely is perfect for you getting into a locker absolutely unnoticed. Of course, you don't need to fast enter a locker, but the time it takes to walk slowly into the locker is so long. It also even creates a slight bit of noise. You can hear the locker doors like squeak as they open. The killer almost always catches me when I walk into a locker while being chased. And a locker build is likely only being used while you're being chased. So Quick and Quiet is perfect for tying any sort of locker build together because the secrecy of getting into that locker is essential for pulling any of this off. And those are my thoughts on every locker perk. Despite how useful they may or may not be, I love all locker perks. I think lockers are so underutilized in this game, yet they're such a fun thing to do for escaping chases. Some people like to think you're a coward for hiding in a locker, but if you're using it to escape a chase, fuck with the killer, stun them, then I think it's just the absolute most fun you can have in Dead by Daylight. Every time I'm in a chase and I utilize these locker perks, I have so much fun. I have thousands of clips, that's an exaggeration, of me using these perks for escapes, and I think every one of them is always just so, so satisfying. So hopefully this convinced you to be less afraid of lockers and utilize these perks to the best of your abilities. I was thinking of going into more of a deep dive with other themed perks like this, such as flashlight perks or just overall gimmick perks. So if anyone would like to see that, then of course let me know. But that's about all. See you around.